And on the debate chat this evening, I have with me in the studios in a couple of minutes an individual who has spent decades on the study of India's magnificent dharmic tradition. He's not come out much in the media, but I believe he's an outspoken voice on matters of India, on Hinduism, on contemporary Indian politics in the context of the geopolitical situation. And he's going to be coming up with what I believe is going to be extremely topical, necessary, and I believe controversial documentary on the BBC soon. And he's going to be telling us more about that. That documentary is called The BBC on Trial. Pandit Satish Sharma will be joining me in the Republic studios this evening for a conversation around his extensive research and findings on what he believes is the outright anti-India, anti-Hindu, anti-right slant of the BBC. Pandit Satish Sharma's work has gone deep into the intricacies of the editorial stand of the BBC, and he has dissected it in what is going to be the most talked about documentary of the year, BBC on Trial. As we pivot to the debate chat tonight, remember, ladies and gentlemen, that the narrative building about India on global portals from the US to France have all been consistent. This ecosystem of the mobilization of the narrative against India, particularly against the Hindu community and Hindu nationalism, is not a new subject. And hence, it is important more than ever for us to discuss these designs that directly target India and our global image. I will play out a backstory to this conversation, and then Pandit Sharma will be with me.
As India rises in the global economic and geopolitical order, the attacks on India's story have become relentless in recent years. While the actors are many, it has been the Western media taking aim at India's global image. From misrepresentation of facts and events during the farmers' protest and the anti-CAA movement, to even dangerous attempts to meddle in domestic politics, like the BBC did with its documentary on 2002 Godhra riots right ahead of the Lok Sabha elections. Foreign interests have been deeply vested in India for quite some time. These visuals of 2022 went viral across the world. BBC was quick to add the hindutva color to the violence and was called out for it. Amidst the crusaders who called out BBC's brazen display of bias in Leicester was Pandit Satish SK Sharma, whose work in dharmic tradition has garnered global acclaim. Pandit Satish Sharma is set to release the much-awaited documentary that he believes will shatter the prism of coloniality entrenched in Western media, particularly the BBC.
The colonizer mind is something which is like a mimetic virus. It can be communicated and it can be spread, but it has a certain pathology.
The upcoming documentary BBC on Trial goes deep into the aspects of BBC's alleged bias as per the research and findings of Pandit Satish Sharma's work. BBC's alleged bias has been noted globally. He joins Arnab on the debate chat with his findings as BBC on Trial gears up for release.
Sharma, welcome. Pandit Satish Sharma is the author and a director of the Global Hindu Federation. But as far as I'm concerned, after my last conversation with you in our newsroom, I feel that you are a very strong voice for the Hindu community, because you come from a very reasonable perspective. You come from a very theological perspective. I personally am delighted, let me say, that I'm a fellow traveler with you as far as my complaints about the BBC are concerned. So what is this work that you're doing, and what's the pivot for it? What's the starting point? Why are you doing this documentary?
Namaskar and Jai Shri Ram. It's a pleasure to be here, Arnabji. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts on this. We're a very quiet community in the United Kingdom. The Hindu community doesn't cause much of a conflict or trouble. But on numerous occasions, we have found that we became the targets of misinformation. And I was fortunate enough to be able to interact with the BBC at the highest levels, right the way through to the Director General, the heads of all of the departments. We presented our evidence to them. and we achieved nothing whatsoever. In the last 8 or 9 years of interacting with them, we haven't been able to successfully get them to change not even a single web page which is published on their websites. This is how intransigent they were. So it became necessary for us to find out, why is this being done? What's actually happening here? Are we in any way, shape or form contributing to what's being done to us? And the journey was really a journey of discovery. We ventured into the history of the BBC to find out what was the guiding vision. Why was it created in this manner? How was it born? And what was the real purpose for which it was created? And we came up with startling discoveries. We delved into the diaries of the original Director General. We came up with some of the campaigns that they had produced and then completely erased from history. And we also discovered some very interesting connections in the colonialist agenda, the manner in which the BBC was leveraged to influence the world's audience to adopt a particular narrative, a narrative which was not based on fact, a narrative which was not based on events nor recorded history, but a narrative which purported to show history in a completely different light, a manner in which they wanted it to appear. And so it became very apparent to us that this is not just a recent problem, this is an old problem. We've had almost 100 years of the BBC operating a particular agenda whilst presenting a totally different face. Now, when I became aware of this, I spoke to a couple of youngsters, and I have to say, it's been a pleasure to find that we now have a generation who are able to do deep research in the languages, find the files, and they have worked to put together this documentary. And I'm fairly confident that what it will do is it will help to rebut some of the gaslighting that is going on against the Bharatiya renaissance at this moment in time.
If you don't mind, I'm going to open up to phone calls, ladies and gentlemen, because I believe many of you would want to talk to him. Now, keep in mind, viewers, as you are listening to Pandit Satish Sharma, that there is an implicit bias. The point he is making is that there is an implicit, unwritten bias. If you say that you are Hindu, you will be typecast as an extreme Hindu, rabid, ultra-nationalist. These words will be used, and the English language has many such words. And the idea of the BBC and of people there is to put you on trial. Anyone who's vocal about their Hindu identity, the BBC puts them on trial. They want to put them on the back foot. What Pandit Satish Sharma is doing now, he's putting the BBC on trial. Do you genuinely believe that not just the BBC, but in certain circles, but particularly the BBC, there is an anti-India, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-Hindu view which is pushed very aggressively but invisibly?
I would go as far as to say that the evidence supports the allegation that the BBC is determined to hinder the reintegration of the Bharatiya civilizational identity. We are seeing that Bharat is reintegrating its economic identity. It's beginning to take a position of primacy. It's reintegrating its political identity. We have seen the Prime Minister being lauded and received with a great deal of respect, more than any Prime Minister before. And so those two identities are becoming strong. But the one identity which they do not want to have reintegrated is the civilizational one. And so we are going to see such an inundation of rhetoric, negative rhetoric, which is designed to deny the Hindu his rightful place in the world's narratives and the conversations.
Is it only a religious thing, or is it also a political thing going on?
Well, I'm saying
is it that they don't like the Modi government, they don't like the BJP in power, they had a comfortable relationship with the Congress even pre-independence and post-independence, and they see the emergence of the BJP in power as a disruption to that comfortable coexistence?
It is. The BJP is seen as the political voice of this civilizational identity. Although many would say that the BJP has not shouldered that as its responsibility, it doesn't wear the mantle of being anything to do with the religious dimension of the civilizational identity, the BBC and the external commentators are imposing that as their straw man. And they are choosing that to attack the BJP in its political space. We will see a lot more of this. Just imagine, from their point of view, what happens when the civilizational identity becomes reintegrated. The civilizational identity is going to say, this is who we were.
Yes.
This is who we are.
Yes.
We were on a trajectory and we were deflected from that trajectory. We had no animus or malice to any other civilization, but we were dragged from our civilizational trajectory and plunged into poverty. Now we want to tell our story. Nobody wants that story to be told, especially not in the institutions which were established out of colonialism and intended to preserve the colonial narrative.
Yes, and viewers, as you're listening to this, also important to remember, viewers, and keep reiterating for the younger generation, when they talk about Macaulay's children, they have targeted, I mean, the colonial rulers earlier have targeted our culture, targeted languages, targeted our religion, targeted Sanskrit, and attempted to delegitimize everything to do with Hinduism as orthodox, and therefore it's unfortunate. And I say this clearly, that irrespective of whose argument has merit or not, the fact is Jawaharlal Nehru always looked upon anything to do strongly assertive of the Hindu community as an orthodox, superstitious point of view. Now, viewers, something interesting happened in the UK when there was violence against Hindus. You would have expected, and I think that's one of the reasons that has provoked this documentary, you would have expected that when Hindus are the victim, then there should be support for them. Here in India, there was an attempt by the previous Congress government to have a communal violence bill which always portrayed Hindus as the aggressors and the minorities and Muslims as the victims. It was controversial, had to be taken back. Now, viewers, I don't know if you know about it, I don't know if you have the pictures on it, but there was violence against the Hindu community in Leicester and Birmingham, where the large Hindu population of Indian origin stays. What happened then is significant. What Pandit Sharma is saying is that even then the sections of the media took a very, very strong view against the Hindu community and portrayed Hindus as the instigators of the riots. How did that happen, and how did the Indian community react to that? Where were you then? How did you see it?
Well, I first heard of what was happening probably the second day of rioting. The second day of the Troubles. And I went to Leicester to find out for myself exactly what was happening. It was a very toxic and incendiary situation, but more so to establish who were these right-wing Hindutvadis who were on the streets of Leicester. That's what I went in search of. I found none. What I did find, though, was quite strange. There was not a single mosque that was attacked. There was not a single attack on any institution associated with the Muslim community. And yet, Hindu temples were attacked, and the evidence was recorded on camera and broadcast around the world.
Yes.
But the manner in which the BBC presented that was to say that there were Hindutvadis who were the instigators of this violence.
Yes.
And there were none. There was absolutely no evidence of any Hindutvadis whatsoever. But this is not the first time this has happened, Arnabji. Way back in 2014, there was an attempt to pass Hindu-specific legislation. Now, we know that the lady jurisprudence is blind to identity.
Yes.
And yet this legislation was targeting us, and I was one of the voices who managed to put together the narrative to challenge it. Immediately, I suddenly became the Hindutva representative of the fascist BJP in the United Kingdom, associated with Prime Minister Modi, and I've never had any interaction or engagement with any of the political parties in this country. And so there is a desire to cast this Hindutvadi trope onto foundations so it can be leveraged at all times. And the BBC is leading that charge.
Because we are here in India now, you've been through my newsroom, there's an increasing self-confidence. And do you see things changing there? What do we need to do? I've been saying, for example, for the last 10 years that the hegemony of the Western media must end. And you too believe, Panditji, that you're of the view that irrespective of merit, any pro-national initiatives launched by the government of India are met with global denigration, often with terminal consequences. There's a very strong anti-India consensus, and all these super influencers, BBC, Guardian, New York Times, you know, they're all, at some level, they do work together. It cannot be accidental that so many of them get it so wrong. Now, what do we need to do this time? What is the requirement now? What is the alternative narrative that needs to be created, and how do you see that happening?
Adobji, there's a very simple solution to this. It's so simple, most people, especially us good-natured Hindus, we don't take this solution.
Yes.
I always ask, what is the locus standi of the person who is engaging in the conversation with me?
Okay.
And so, are they a friend? Are they a teacher? Am I the teacher? Are they the student? Or are they a white savior? Now, this is important because there is still a mental momentum in the West that they have the right to enter into any space, any conversation whatsoever. And so when somebody like the BBC is wanting to interview me, I always ask them, I'm sorry, are we friends? Or are you coming to contribute an opinion about something that's deeply personal? Because if you are not a friend and you are not a student, then you don't have the right to delve into this space.
I agree with you that, very often they try to use people like you, they would try to use as a prop. That's what the BBC does, interview Pandit Satish Sharma to sort of balance it out, which is why we need to be the narrative. We don't need to be over-dependent, and Republic is working very hard on creating a global alternative by next year. We have a caller. Murthy ji is calling from Hyderabad. Murthy ji, good evening.
Good evening.
What do you think about what Pandit Satish Sharma is doing? Do you think his documentary about the BBC is important in today's context?
Yes, first of all, let me speak to about yourself and Republic TV. I'm a big fan of Republic and Arnab yourself.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent body language and excellent subject. Excellent. I'm hats off to you.
Thank you,
Hats off to your courageous. And now, Satish Sharma ji, yes, he is doing excellent work, and I just wanted to ask him a single question about whether we should go for on social media to defend all these BBC's allegations.
He's asking you whether you should be on social media, whether all these allegations should be more aggressively countered on because that's social media, because that's, I presume, where the disinformation happens.
Yes, social media is actually a gift from the divine for us. I used to be interviewed by the BBC. They misrepresented me on one occasion.
Okay.
And so from thereafter, I recorded all of the interviews I had at my end as well.
Very
and
good.
the next time they did it, I sent them my recording and said, here's what really happened. You missed all these bits out. And they have stopped interviewing people like myself now in entirety.
Wow.
So social media is the battleground. And in fact, social media is so important. It's the one medium where the world's communities are now asking all of the traditional institutions to answer questions. The institutions that were never questioned in the past are being held accountable like never before. Only a few days ago, we have a large gathering outside of Parliament demanding that Keir Starmer resign, and that was all absolutely coordinated. It was collated and then actually enacted on social media.
I think we need to put the mirror back on them, Panditji, because, for example, I was appalled when they said that in Manipur they had a headline, "Murders and mayhem are tearing apart an Indian state." And this is the same BBC which underreported what happened before and after Thatcher's time in Ireland and Northern Ireland, and that is indefensible. Mr. Tirumala is joining us from Andhra Pradesh. Mr. Tirumala, good evening.
Good evening, Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram, sir.
So Pandit SK Sharma ji, I would like to ask a simple question that whatever BBC is collecting information or getting for their broadcast purposes, what is the support that is coming from India? Because the information is being transferred from somebody from Indian groups only as an input to them. Because when we see a lot of BBC correspondents in TV debates, etc., they are supportive of whatever is that anti-India, anti-Hindu, etc., etc., etc. So, how to tackle this type of internal sabotages?
Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It's a wonderful question. The internal sabotages will always be there. They have a loud voice, but that voice is really supported by ancestral media organizations with very deep pockets. But it is changing. Let me share with you, when Leicester happened, we put out a counter-narrative.
True.
We challenged the BBC. A group of our community decided they wanted to protest outside of the BBC. And for the first time in history, there was a deluge of support which came in the Twitter space from the Indian subcontinent. In fact, the BBC commented that there were over 200,000 tweets influencing social media activity and actually contributing towards diffusing the situation in Leicester. So please don't be despondent about it. What I would say is that everybody should have the capacity to interact with social media. It is a powerful medium. One BBC report which painted Hindu men as potential rapists had an immediate impact across Europe, where our Hindu men students were denied access into universities on the basis of that one BBC report. So it's important that we all engage, it's important that we all become familiar and take advantage of this incredible medium that's been made available to us.
No, I think what you're doing is very brave, because you are there and you're fighting them where they obviously have a lot of influence. But I'm happy to say, viewers, that we are very happy to support Pandit Satish Sharma because of the intensity of his conviction. What I've seen, our team members have been speaking to him. We're very impressed and we wish you all the best. And you know, we will support your documentary on BBC On Trial when it is released in whichever way that we can. Rishabh Singh, our last caller, is from Pune. Rishabh.
Yeah, sir. Thanks, Arnab, sir, for taking this interview with Satish, sir. And my question would be at a moment when in Bangladesh, Hindus are getting butchered, they are exposing the naming and shaming. At other side, Satish, sir, is truly promoting our Hindu culture. We have been tolerated for a longer time, and we are the only religion that is tolerating.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If I could just comment on that, we have so much to offer. The world is also holding its religious institutions to account like never before.
Yes.
But they have no alternative to go to. I have met people who left the missionary traditions, who left the more aggressive traditions, and then after a period in the wilderness, they had nowhere to go to, and they found community back in one of their old traditions in a less robust manner. We need to get our vision in front of the world. The world is desperately looking for a dharmic solution. Our solution places humanity higher than ideology, and we are the only people who have said it's good to be born and incarnated as human beings. We don't have guilt to be concerned about. We should be proud of our identity.
And we should also leverage everything that we can. You know, we were talking about it. I'll wrap up by saying we don't have the time right now. United Kingdom and India should have excellent relations. We have a lot in common. But it cannot be a one-way street. You cannot have a free trade deal with India, only want to do business with India, but not defend Indian interests and people of Indian origin and Hindus when they are put into difficult situations. So, ladies and gentlemen, we need to be more vocal. More power to you. We will support you whichever way we can. I think what you're doing is very innovative, disruptive and brave.
We want an honest relationship, don't we?
Yes, we do.
And it's sad to say that the current government are not necessarily honest brokers at this moment in time. We have to educate them with gentle fortitude and force to come to the table honestly and engage in genuine conversations. Some of that may be uncomfortable, but we have to make that happen.
Well, thank you, Pandit Satish Sharma. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, that was a very interesting chat. Tell me whether you like these one-to-one conversations on my program occasionally. Now, viewers, on the other side tonight, the debate of the day that nobody's talking about are all the incidents regarding rail accidents, rail tragedies and averted accidents. Are they part of one big sabotage attempt? A story you cannot miss on the other side.
Time for a quick breather. Arnab will be right back with the debate.